Hello and welcome to this special video we created specifically for Mandarin Chinese learners because we want to have a conversation with you about your study, learning approaches specifically, and self-learning online in general. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you the 5 essentials of learning Mandarin Chinese online by yourself. By essentials, I mean these are 5 simple steps that all learners should take to make your learning efficient and productive. For those who don't know, I'm proud to tell you that we're a leading Mandarin course developer in the UK. Basically, we robotize best Mandarin teaching practices to online courses for self-study learners and teachers, meaning we take the teaching approaches of the best Chinese teachers in the UK and transform it to interactive lessons so that self-study students can achieve academic level outcomes by themselves. In the past 2 years, we interacted with hundreds of teachers and learners and helped most of them achieve their learning target in a much easier and enjoyable way. I'm telling you this because this is the real deal. We're frustrated to see well-intentioned students working hard day and night, but the outcome is just being jeopardized because they're being given bad advice and bad support when it comes to what approaches they should be taking while learning by themselves. Now, I'm going to quickly run through these 5 essentials of learning Mandarin Chinese online by yourself. You may want to take notes. Feel free to pause the video and grab a pen and some paper. Essential number 1. Align your learning target with a proper defined scheme of work. Many students probably have never heard of the word scheme of work. In the UK, a scheme of work is a guideline that defines the structure and content of an academic course. It provides students an overview of their courses and helps them to ensure that the learning aims and objectives of the course are met successfully. Here's an example. A proper scheme of work often means carefully planned progression, ensures a course provides you well-explained language points, tips, extensions, and necessary practices. Some self-study learners simply like the swim and sink approach because it's so simple and easy to start with. But let me tell you, it takes a lot more effort to sustain, especially when learning Chinese. Choosing online courses with carefully designed schemes of work will make your learning much more efficient than going into your learning blindly. I'd suggest you ask for the scheme of work even when you're learning with a teacher. Essential number 2. Learn all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing together. Again, if you're serious about your learning outcome, you want to end up being able to use the language to communicate with people as a tool. Or if you want to get to know more about the culture and history, you have to learn these 4 skills together. You might say, I only want to be able to speak the language. Well, if this is your target, it doesn't mean you only need to learn speaking. I can't even count how many students turn to me and say they're really good in terms of speaking and managing the 5 tones, but they can't understand a thing during a conversation. Learning by skills does work for most Indo-European languages because if you manage to speak well, spelling and reading won't be a major problem. However, Chinese is a different story. Even though you manage the tones and speaking well, you still need a lot of listening practices to understand how exactly the tonal language works. On top of that, the phonetics of Mandarin Chinese has no apparent correlation to the written form itself. You can't read most Chinese words from its appearance. Plus, there are so many characters with the same pronunciation but different meanings, like ji-ro and ji-ro. Exactly the same pronunciation, ji-ro. But one means chicken meat, the other means muscle. You can never understand the language properly if you don't do the 4 skills together. You might want to put more emphasis on one skill that you think is most useful, but you have to learn them together, while a skill-by-skill learning approach would simply mean 4 times the effort. Essential number 3. Practice smartly. Language is a skill, meaning you have to practice mastering it. For some self-study learners, it seems impossible to practice properly, as you don't have a teacher to talk to or listen to. Some find even practicing to read is challenging, as it's just difficult to find reading materials which align with your own learning progress. Writing characters seems easy to practice, as you only have to write them down repeatedly, but it's just too boring to sustain. Everyone knows they need to practice, and they have their own ways to practice. But how do you do it smartly and effectively? In other words, how do you make the repetition enjoyable and fun? There are many ways. First, use images to remember characters at beginner level. For example, cat is a cat with a fence and 4 bushes. In this way, students remember the character 7 times quicker than usual. The Chinese language is highly composite. 2,500 frequently used Chinese characters will lead to over 10,000 words. Therefore, to quickly get familiar with the beginner level character gives you a solid foundation to progress quickly to the next level, where you can start to learn characters by its logical form, such as radicals. Second, make sure you use online courses that are interactive. What's really important is to get feedback swiftly. You can't progress without knowing whether you're doing it right or wrong. For example, practices with immediate check function. Third, make sure you use authentic contents. There are quite a few apps and online practices using machine voiceover rather than a real human being. It might work for separate characters, but when it comes to sentences, it's not helpful at all, especially for Chinese, which is such a tonal language. A smart self-learner should focus on these effective approaches as much as the language itself. Essential number 4. Trying it out in real life is still very important. Traveling to China to see it for yourself and learning it in the environment is always good, but also quite expensive for the purpose of learning a language only. There are so many online communities, such as WhatsApp and WeChat, where you could find native speakers willing to socialize easily. For example, in our WhatsApp community, our native speaker instructors are communicating and helping learners on a daily basis. Essential number 5. There's no shortcut, but useful tools. There's no shortcut. If I have to repeat the most important thing 3 times, there is no shortcut, there is no shortcut, and there is no shortcut. You've got to dedicate yourself to your learning. Dive into it. You may struggle sometimes, but the fruitful outcome will compensate for everything. The good news is there are good tools available to make the learning process much easier for you. A good tool you need must provide carefully designed progression and scheme of work, well-explained language points, tips, logic behind the characters, and so on. All 4 skill practices based on authentic contents. Immediate feedback. The good news is we, as
iPandarin,
provide all of these. Take your action now to start your new journey of learning Mandarin Chinese. All you have to do is visit our website
iPandarin.com
and register on the right-hand side to claim your free lessons.